WBNE.
Hello, and welcome to episode 53, all about The Black Gates Open. Chapter 10, Book 5 of The Return of the King, being the 53rd part of That's What I'm Tolkien About. Hello, my name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC, and today I'm joined once again by my dear friend, Bethany.
Hello!
She is my first guest back in person.
This is so exciting.
And Corona really threw me off because there have been a couple guests that I have in person. And I was really freaking out. I was like, oh my God, am I ever going to get to a point where I can have Bethany on again to do a Return of the King chapter? So
it's been a weird time.
Yeah. That being said, we are not recording because, Corona's over.
It is not.
It's not. We already chose to risk it a couple weeks ago so I could watch Bethany watch the finale of Avatar.
We had enough with the Netflix watch party, which was great.
Those are fine, but
we've already shared our germs.
I wanted to
accepted it.
Watch your face.
Yeah.
Watch the show. So also, we're going to be recording a bonus episode that will come out as you're listening to this. It'll come out this Saturday. And we're going to talk about Avatar!
Woohoo!
Because I know there are a couple people who wanted me to do, a mini podcast or bonus episodes or something about Avatar when it first dropped on Netflix. And TBH, that's a lot of work, so we're just going to do one conversational episode talking about it, because Bethany has this unique perspective of she didn't watch it as a child.
I watched a handful of episodes, and then my conservative mother changed her mind. So
So go listen to that this Saturday. But right now we're here to talk about
Black Gate.
The Black Gate opens. And am I correct and or incorrect in thinking that there's also a chapter called The Black Gate is Closed?
I think there's The Way is Shut or The Black Gate is Shut. That might have been in Two Towers, though, which I don't have on
And I was going to say, I have already packed that up, so...
I can Google it.
Yeah, listeners, this is also a very momentous occasion, because this is going to be the last episode I record in this apartment.
Ah!
Yeah.
Wow.
There is. Okay, chapter 3, I have to do the Roman numerals. 4. Okay, book 4, chapter 3 in Two Towers is called The Black Gate is Closed.
Gotcha.
And now it's opening again! Oh, and that's not good.
That means nothing good is happening. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I did the thing where I started recording as I was reading the chapter. Mm-hmm. Because I thought something really, epic was gonna... my expectations for this chapter was that it was gonna be an epic battle. And, when I was imagining the Black Gates opening, is it open... I mean, and that is what happens.
Yeah.
It's just, on the last page of the chapter.
Yeah.
So... I was imagining, it was gonna open and then just swarms of evil come out.
Yes.
And that's what the whole chapter would be.
Okay, well. You didn't
But it wasn't. I definitely liked elements of it.
Cliffhangery and,
a
whole lot of that, so.
I definitely still appreciated it, but my expectations going in were this is gonna be, huge battle, because that's what Gandalf was talking about in the previous chapter, where Gandalf was like, hey, we're all gonna die. Who's in? So I thought that's what was gonna happen. I thought
everyone was gonna die.
Basically. That's not what happened.
Well.
So they go up, they start to leave, and unfortunately, our homeboy, Merry,
my sweet boy,
he has to stay because he's just been hurt. And Aragorn says, he's like, you can't fight, you're not fit for this. But don't worry, Pippin is gonna go, and he's gonna represent the Shire folk, which I just think it's a nice gesture, but at the same, once again, really, what can a hobbit do?
Well,
a single hobbit
You gonna find out.
In the battle. I mean, I say that, and Merry was also a single hobbit, and he helped take down the Witch King,
But I like, too, that I feel like this is one, if you could go back in time and, like, grab Aragorn by the shoulder in Rivendell all those years ago and be like, hey, in a while, Pippin's gonna be your dude. He's gonna be the one that stands for all the other hobbits. He would have just, like,
he would have been like,
no.
oh no.
My God. Not that one. Anyone but that one.
And I like this because he gets a little dig in at Pippin. Because he says, do not grudge him his chance of peril, for though he has done as well as his fortune allowed him, he has yet to match your deed. So I kind of like that little dig of like, Merry, you've sacrificed so much. Pippin's barely done anything.
I mean, I feel like it was meant more to make Merry feel better.
Though.
Like, you're already the hero.
Exactly,
Pippin's gotta have his chance now.
Yeah, it's like, in one respect, it's complimenting Merry, but it's like a little bit of an insult to Pippin of being like, okay, Pippin, now it's your turn to risk death.
And also like, come on, buddy, step up. I like the way that it's broken up, in my book at least. You know, the little paragraph breaks. And we had that nice little bit about Merry. I was like, oh, that's nice, you know. I feel bad that he can't come, and he's upset, but now we're moving on with the story. And then there's another little section that's still about Merry, and it's still like, it just kind of drives home. He's really upset about this, and like, he's the only one that isn't going off to face Mordor.
Also interesting to point out is that this chapter opens and closes with the perspective of a hobbit. And it opens with Merry being sad that Pippin is going and he's not, and that they won't be together. And then it also ends with Pippin being sad that Merry's not there with him.
Yep. I love that.
Them Hobbs. I was like, that was my first note, that I was like, don't separate them!
I know!
I'm like, can't Pippin stay with Merry? Like, please.
Right. Do we really need somebody to represent the hobbits? People don't even know they exist.
Just got reunited. And it feels so good. It's upsetting.
It is. Anytime that those two are separated, because they're such, like, close friends.
Makes me sad.
And I love that about these books. There's so many, like, good duo, like, male friendships, and you just love them. You love them together. You love seeing them help each other out. I skimmed the chapter before, and there's Legolas and Gimli powing around. Like,
yeah, that's what...
all these good male friendships.
That was one of my favorite parts of the previous chapter, is that it's like, we finally, I think for like the first time since this book start in like the second chapter, we see Legolas and Gimli together again, and then we see Merry and Pippin together again, and it's like,
I love them all.
Our babies!
Don't make them go through this.
And as the army's walking off, I hate this line. Merry could see him not far off, a small but upright figure among the tall men of Minas Tirith.
There he is.
My little baby off to destroy people.
And as they're watching them walk off, Burgle, I've never learned how to say his name.
We'll go with either
Burgle,
one. Cool.
comes over and talks to him, and Merry's just very sad that he is alone. And all his friends have left, and doom is imminent. As he's, like, having these, like, dark, sad thoughts, he realizes that his wound suddenly, like, increases in pain. And I think that's really interesting, that this is, like, a evil, dark wound. And as he's thinking of these, like, dark thoughts and having these dark feelings, the wound gets worse. And it's... I don't know, cool that Tolkien, like, very subtly puts that in.
It's like a physical, I don't know if it's embodiment is the right thing, but, you know, physical representation of this despair that they're all experiencing.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And also, it's a creepy, evil wound, and respond to creepy, evil situations.
Yeah. So the army marches onward. That's kind of all that happens.
Yeah, I put in my notes, I think, like, I just wanted to hear what you thought of this chapter, because I thought it was suspenseful and exciting, but it is a lot of walking. And I know how you feel about chapters that are a lot of walking.
True to Tolkien. So I did listen to the audiobook chapter for this one too. And the audiobook is really well done, because the way that he narrates it, it is really suspenseful, and he makes it really suspenseful, and you're like, I feel so uneasy, and like the ambient noise and the like voice actors and music and stuff that they put into it to, of course, help.
That would help.
Oh,
that's awesome.
I'm gonna break your heart at the end of this chapter with with what they do in the audiobook
Oh,
at
no.
a point. So
The end of this
Just
chapter
wait.
already broke my heart, but okay.
yeah, so the audiobook is really cool because he narrates it so well, and you feel this, like, you feel what they're feeling.
Mhm.
But reading it, I was just kind of like, okay. Like, what did I write? Random thought. What is the origin of the word booty as it relates to the word treasure? Because at one point they say,
You were really thinking some high and lofty thoughts.
yeah, like
in this
that's how
chapter.
much, that's how like little is happening right now, in the sense that, so it says, some were strengthening the ferries and boat bridges that the enemy had made and in part destroyed when they fled. Some gathered stores and booty. And at first I was like, oh, they're getting
gathering
booty.
that booty.
And then I was like, oh no, booty as in like how pirates are,
Yeah,
are like,
pirates booty.
there's the booty. And then that's what made me think. I was like, when did like how did that get to a point in the English language where they were like, oh yeah, treasure, booty. You know?
I do, and I don't have an answer for you.
There you go. Anyway, so that's one of my thoughts.
That's fair. Okay.
And then I also read, this is a lot more strategy setup and less battle than I thought it would be. I thought it was gonna, like I said, I thought it was gonna be a huge battle.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more of like, they sent these people up this way and these people down this way, and over here they were doing this,
Yeah.
and
I was getting a little lost in here too, because it's...
the internet right now.
God,
Neither can I.
God, that scared the Shire out of me. Listeners, our Google Mini just went off without being asked.
Nope.
Unprompted.
She's always listening, everyone.
How dare you?
Always
oh my God.
listening.
I'm glad the FBI agent and our Google Mini is listening. I hope they're enjoying this conversation.
What was I saying? Oh, I was getting a little lost reading this.
Yeah, I tried to, once again,
All the locations.
flipped to the map.
Yeah.
And was like, where are they? And then I was like, I don't know where they are. I give
Yeah.
up.
We've also reached... I have read all of these books many years ago. I haven't read Return of the King since I was a kid, so I'm going off of my experience with the movies, and I don't think this is in there.
Perfect.
So...
I was going to say, this is something
I'm
that
with
I
ya.
feel like they easily condense in the movie to like, it goes from maybe like Gandalf and everyone talking and planning, and then
Yeah.
it just cuts
I think
to
they
them
just show up at the gate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're there.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to see... But yeah, I
Lots
mean,
of
in
walking.
true Tolkien fashion, he was like, nah, people are going to want to
They
know.
need the details.
They're gonna be so confused if I don't explain exactly where they went and how they
Yeah.
split up the forces, but they're gonna be lost and confused. And I'm like, I'm lost and confused with
Right,
this in the
right.
book.
Too
So
many details.
yeah, they get to, how do you a full do-off.
Off.
Sure. And this is where in Two Towers, before Gollum, Frodo, and Sam get into Mordor, this is where they come across this like gross, creepy, beheaded statue, and the head of the king is like over on the side, and it had like weird dark markings on it, and I was like, Gollum, did you do
And then
something?
he starts chanting.
I thought, I don't know if we ever like find out, or if we have already found out like who did that, or if it's just always been like that.
I'm sure wiser Tolkien people than I could tell you
So-
everything you ever wanted to know about that statue.
Anyway, so that
but-
it says the hideous orc head that was set upon the carven figure was cast down and broken in pieces, and the old king's head was raised and set in its place once more, still crowned with white and golden flowers. And men labored to wash and pare away all the foul scrawls that orcs had put upon the stone. Okay, so I guess
Yeah.
that's the answer. It was orcs. At the time, I thought it was Gollum, because, like, literally the night before, he had once again, like, snuck off.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
and torn down some statues.
Yeah. We could use Gollum right now in Richmond.
Can
He's
we?
going around
I'm
Tearing
with
down the
you,
statues.
but I don't know about using Gollum.
Gollum. Anyway.
Gollum. But then I really liked the paragraph right after that when they're talking about the path to Minas Morgul, which took me a hot second to remember that is where Shelob lives. And some people are saying,
Right.
like, oh yeah, we should go that way and destroy it. And Gandalf is like, pump the brakes. We cannot go that way, because if that's the way that Sam and Frodo went, we don't want to draw attention to that.
Yeah.
But I love what does he say about, because of the evil that dwelt in that valley where the minds of living men would turn to madness and horror. There's a giant spider down there. so we're not going that way. But
Yeah.
Frodo and Sam are, like, they've already gone through it and come out the other side just fine. And
I mean,
Gandalf's like, it's gonna drive all of our soldiers absolutely insane, so we can't go that way.
have they come out the other side just fine?
Well,
Because where we last left them,
Sam's okay.
Sam, like, got Frodo captured by the orcs.
This is true.
And it was like a moment of, I don't remember if I ever like said this when I read that chapter or when I did the episode finishing Two Towers, but like there's this moment of like, oh, so the fate of our future of this land rests, it's all up to Sam now.
Remember what I said before about which hobbit would you pick?
Being like, oh, great.
We're all gonna die.
Yeah, so they want, some of them are saying we should go take down Minas Morgul and like either overtake it or destroy it or whatever. Mm-hmm. But obviously the plan is to draw attention away from Frodo and Sam so that Sauron is distracted so Frodo and Sam can complete the mission.
Yep.
So they go, I think, north is generally what I figured is what I've guessed.
Works for me.
/ surmised. And as they're walking, they're calling out and they're saying, the lords of Gondor are come. Let all leave this land or yield them up. And then my homeboy, who has quickly, like, unexpectedly become one of my favorite characters, Imrahil, he's like, he hasn't done anything wrong so far. Knock on wood. Or
Knock
I don't
on
have
something.
wood. And he's always like making great points and doing awesome. And I'm like,
Coming in.
I want
clutch.
you by my side at the end of the world.
Yes.
He says, say not the lords of Gondor. Say the King Elisar. For that is true, even though he has not yet sat upon the throne. And it will give the enemy more thought if the heralds use that name. Mm-hmm. And so they go through this land saying that the King of Elisar has come. I just love that it was Imrahil that said that because he's technically like the prince or leading whatever person for Minas Tirith right now because Aragorn said, I'm not gonna take over or do anything right now. You've been doing great, bud. I'm gonna leave that up to you, and if the time comes for me to take over the throne, I will. And Imrahil is just such a homeboy that he's like, I respect you so much, but like, let's be real, you are the king.
Wasn't he the one in the last chapter that when they were asking, like, yeah, who wants to come on our hopeless mission? He's like, well, Aragorn said that I could, so I'm going to. Because I love him.
Yeah. It's just nice because, like, this easily could have been a character or a, like, subplot or something that Tolkien set up where Imrahil is mad that Aragorn is here or...
like another Denethor kind of situation.
Yeah, or is jealous that he's trying to come in and take over, and it's, like, not that situation at all.
Yep.
In this essay, I will...
Now this is a podcast about
Imrahil, yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't really get, when I read that, it was like, oh shoot, they're going to start going around saying, like, the King Elisar commands this, and, to, like, ruffle some feathers and really get a reaction out of the orcs and the monsters out there, but it doesn't really seem to do much. It doesn't really seem to make that big of a difference.
Yeah, I was a bit confused about this, because as they're walking through, I can't tell if they're saying this to be, like, I guess maybe from my perspective, they're saying this to alert everyone in the land or who's there so that if there are people or beings or whatever there that aren't on Sauron's side and don't want to be caught in this fight, they're now like being warned that like the Shire is about to go down.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Or because it also says none answered the challenge. So that's when I was like, so are they trying to, like, draw out Sauron's forces so they can, like, fight them by saying this? Because, like, them's fighting words.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it's also just kind of like
well, and they're expecting this whole time. Like, that's where the suspense comes from in this chapter, is they're expecting at every moment to be attacked as they're, like, marching into enemy territory, and nobody is showing up. Nobody's responding to their calls. They get, like, this one little attack that's not really a threat, like they beat them really quickly, so then they're kind of wondering like, well, where is everybody? If we're, are they all gonna be at the gate when we get there? Are they like, what's going on?
Yeah. Also, Tolkien makes a point to mention that the weather was fair. Which I was like, okay.
Just in case.
At least the
Just
weather.
in case.
At least the weather is nice, I guess.
Well, for now.
Speaking of, like, them expecting something to pop out, that happens! This strong force of orcs and Easterlings come out of nowhere. They have a fight, and they completely... Our guys completely beat them. Aragorn warns everyone that, yeah, that was cool and all, but that's probably like a...
They want to be...
He says... Oh, to give us false hope, basically. Like, to make us feel more comfortable. What's the phrase I'm thinking of?
False sense of security?
Yeah, false sense of security.
Yeah.
That, like, oh, look, we easily took down this one army in this one battle and we won it. We're actually a lot stronger than we think. And Aragorn's like, don't, like, play into this. Sauron wants us to have this false sense of security, to think that, like, oh, we're okay, we're gonna be okay. At one point, there's a group of men who are supposed to be going north, west, I don't know, somewhere.
Ahead.
They're supposed to be moving somewhere further into, like, darker lands. It says, so desolate were those places, and so deep the horror that lay on them, that some of the host were unmanned, and they could neither walk nor ride further north. And this is, like, a longer quote that I'm going to read, so hang in there. Aragorn looked at them, and there was pity in his eyes rather than wrath. For these young men from Rohan, from Westfold far away, or husbandmen from Lossarnac, sure, have never, ever heard that place mentioned at any point in this book, but
Don't
okay.
worry about it.
They showed up. Good for them. And to them, Mordor has been from childhood a name of evil and yet unreal, a legend that had no part in their simple life. And now they walked like men in a hideous dream made true, and they understood not this war, nor why fate should lead them to such a pass. And I love this moment for Aragorn because you really see him. I mean, this book is kind of about him.
Yeah, yes. He's on the
Return
cover.
of the King. And we've seen him in, especially this first half, really grow into becoming this leader and this, like, kingly man who is, that he looked at them with pity in his eyes rather than wrath.
Yep.
And that's such a testament to his character that he didn't, like, scream at them and be like, you're a bunch of wussies, like, just go up there and just suck it up, be a man.
Yep.
He understands where they're coming from, and he's able to, like, empathize with them and be like, they never in their wildest dreams would imagine that they would be in such a horrific place that they've only heard, like, tales of. And yet here they are, and that's not something that I take lightly. And so he tells some of them to go another way and to try and retake it, and yeah, shows them mercy instead of just yelling at them and telling them to, like, go on anyway. And this, like, little moment for some of the men, then some, being shamed by his mercy, overcame their fear and went on, and the others took new hope, hearing of a manful deed within their measure that they could turn to, and they departed. So this is like a small moment in this chapter, but it's just, like, a great moment to show Aragorn's growth as a character.
Yeah.
And this is when I wrote down Aragorn 2020.
Please. Someone with character.
Oh man.
But yeah, and I also loved that little scene, just for everything that it shows you about Aragorn and the type of leader that he's going to be and that he's becoming throughout this book. There's also so much symbolism and imagery in the rest, like, from this point on the rest of the chapter, that screams of World War II experiences to me. Like, that about...
I totally missed all of that.
Really?
Yes!
Oh my gosh, the whole time I was like, wow,
because I'm an
really
idiot.
Writing through your pain, aren't you, Tolkien?
This is why, I mean, when has he not done
This is
that?
true, yeah.
So...
That's where great art comes from pain. Yeah, just talking about the desolation that lay before them. They walked like men in a hideous dream made true. It talks later on as they're making camp about smoke and fumes rising out of the earth and a shroud covering the sky. And I found a blog post from Tor.com. I think that's a publisher. But just talking about this chapter, and it says, the idea of war as a dreamlike state cannot be original to World War I, and yet it immediately reminded me of World War I poetry. I know that the breaking point here is not combat, but landscape, which permits the straddling of the conflicting worldviews of epic heroism and psychological realism, and it's just very Tolkien. So it's very similar to... I also have a really sad World War I poem, but I don't have to read that because it's
Yes! Read it!
Okay.
Yeah, listeners, Bethany was like, oh my god, I felt so unprepared when I've been on before. And I'm like, literally,
Came
you're
with
fine.
the notes today, y'all.
And yeah, so she was like, I'm going to study.
I am all
I'm going to
about
write
this
notes.
chapter.
I'm doing research. And I'm like, you could have shown up and been like, I could have opened the door and you could have been finishing the chapter. And I would have been fine with it.
But
yeah.
The readers would have known.
No, they wouldn't have.
They would have known. But yeah, so in that blog post, she linked to a poem, and I got really excited when I saw it because I read it in college. I will just read the last stanza.
I wonder if I also read it.
Dulce et decorum est.
I don't remember the name, but
That's okay.
I remember I took a literature class specifically about the night. Oh, well, I guess that would have been World War One.
This is World War One.
Oh.
Yeah,
Never mind.
that's when he
I
fought.
thought you said World War Two.
No. Oh, I might have. I meant one.
Wait, did he fight World War One or two?
Mm-hmm. He wrote this in, like, the 50s, when he was older by then. He fought in World War One.
Oh. No, that makes sense. Yeah, no, I knew that. I knew that. I think because in my brain I was like, oh, he wrote it in the 50s. That was closest to World War II.
Yeah.
Right.
But no, I think he fought in World War One, and that's why there's a lot of trench warfare.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I had a literature class about, like, the 1920s, and I was like, great, we're gonna read Gatsby the whole time. No, what happened? We didn't even read Gatsby.
Read about everyone being depressed.
I was mad about it.
That's what came out of that.
And yeah, we had like a whole section about literature and stuff about like post-war stuff, and I remember there was one poem that had something to do with like tear gas or something.
That might be
is that
this
what this
one.
is?
I think
yeah,
this might be this one.
Cool. All right, let's read it. Woo!
So I'll just read the last bit. I don't know if you do trigger warning. It's a little bit violent.
Yeah, listeners, trigger warning if violence is not your thing or makes you uncomfortable.
If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face, like a devil sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gurgling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud, of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell him with such high zest, to children ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. So there's a lot of sad imagery in there, but a lot of it, the smothering dreams and just the a lot of death imagery, and a lot of the false view of glory. The poem, it's the title of the poem, Dulce decorum est, I think translates to like how sweet and right it is, and then pro patria mori is to die for your country. So it's all about, there's this false idea of going to battle and dying gloriously and like giving yourself up for your country, and it's in reality
a lot more
really
horrific.
gritty and awful and traumatizing. And I think that comes across in this chapter a lot, that there's a lot of hopelessness in this chapter, and there's not ever, even with like, I noted too, like even with Merry and Pippin, how it's kind of bookended with them. Neither of them are ever like, Merry's not excited that he killed the Witch King. He's really upset that his friends are going away, probably gonna die. Pippin's not excited that he's on this glorious battlefield. He just wants peace and he wants to be back with his friends. Like there's not a whole lot of glorifying this battle, and I feel like that probably comes from a lot of what Tolkien experienced and the horrors of war.
Yeah, I will say throughout this book, whenever there's a battle scene or fighting or any kind, Tolkien, he doesn't glorify it at all. He doesn't glorify this sense of like war and duty and like sacrificing yourself for your country or whatever. He makes it a very dark, terrifying thing to read about because that's what he experienced himself. And I'm sure there was, like for him, when he probably went to war, there was probably a lot of messaging, propaganda, as I would call it, of like, that probably did glorify and being like, you're gonna fight for your country and you're gonna be a hero and blah, blah, blah. And then like the realities of it are just so more unimaginable than you could like...
And you see that in this scene with Aragorn where he's talking about like these young men that came from who knows where. We've never heard of these places, but how could they expect that they would be doing this? And like, this isn't what they signed up for kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, a lot of parallelism, I think, with probably what Tolkien experienced and what he saw in the war.
Exactly.
But
And then my note after this part was, so this chapter is low-key boring. Because like I said, it's a lot of like war strategy, army strategy stuff.
It is, yeah.
As they make their way towards the Black Gates.
What did you think when they got to the gate? That's kind of your first experience with, well, not really. I guess Frodo and Sam experience.
Yeah, they mentioned that. They say that they were approaching the Moranon and the Moranon.
Mana.
Moranon.
Where are you looking?
Here.
Moranon.
Moranon?
Sure.
Great. They were approaching the Moranon from the northwest, even as Frodo had done. So this is where, I believe, when Frodo, Sam, and Gollum... I was like, there was a third one in there. I was like, who's the third person? When Frodo, Sam, and Gollum come out of the Marshes of the Dead, they originally come here to the north of Mordor. And this is where Frodo, they're all like, there's no way we're going to be able to enter from here. Actually, I think that was in the chapter, The Black Gate is Closed.
Yep, probably.
Because that was after the Marshes of the Dead. Don't come for me if that was wrong.
Chronologically, you're right.
I think that's how it happened. I think that's what was happening in the chapter The Black Gate is Closed, is they get there and they're like, crap, this isn't gonna work.
Yeah.
And that's when Gollum is like, secret tunnel!
Secret tunnel!
Secret tunnel!
Tunnel! Yeah!
I get the reference now.
Yes! So that's when they go south. So this army is kind of doing the opposite of what Frodo and Sam have done. Where they started out heading towards Minas Morgul and then went north. And then Frodo, Sam, and Gollum were north and went south towards Minas Morgul. So they get there and the Black Gate is shut right now.
Yep.
They do a huge list of all the people who were there.
Yep.
There was Gandalf as chief herald and let me start over. When all was ordered, the captains rode forth towards the Black Gate with a great guard of horsemen and the banner and heralds and trumpeters. There was Gandalf as chief herald and Aragorn with the sons of Elrond and Éomer of Rohan and Imrahil and Legolas and Gimli and Peregrine were bidden to go also, so that all the enemies of Mordor should have a witness. And this is when I got really sad and upset that Faramir and Éowyn are not at this battle because they are presumably still recovering.
Yeah. I mean, they're represented. Their people are, but...
It still makes me sad.
If we brought Éowyn to this battle, she would have won it too quickly. It would have been like Captain Marvel.
Exactly! That's like my go-to reason for like, why is Captain Marvel not an Endgame? Because it would have been over.
To invoke her name.
It would have been a 1 hour movie.
As opposed to the 6 we got.
Oh man. So yeah, so I just had a moment to be like, oh, they're not here to like, because what I'm assuming is kind of going to happen is that this is going to be happening simultaneously meanwhile Sam and Frodo are doing whatever mischief they're doing in Mordor.
Mischief, that's a good word for it.
Whatever they're up to in Mordor.
Bold of you to assume, after the rest of this chapter, that Sam and Frodo are still able to cause
mischief. Are still alive, yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm assuming it would be a really dark book if, like...
Sips Dr. Pepper, suggestively.
So I'm assuming that, like, this is going to be the last stand.
Yeah.
So it kind of made me sad that Éowyn and Faramir, who have been such awesome characters in this
Faramir didn't do much. Éowyn
battle.
did a lot.
What do you mean Faramir didn't do much?
He failed his mission, came back barely alive, and his father almost killed him.
That's not his fault. You can't use that against him. Also, he had to live his whole life with Boromir and Denethor. I think he turned out pretty good, considering how he could have turned out.
You got a point. Okay.
You know? Yeah, so they stand there and it just says they cried. And I was like, is it Aragorn? Is it Gandalf? Who? So I guess they all wrote down the speech.
Just imagining them in sync.
That they all said together. Come forth, let the Lord of the Black Land come forth. Justice shall be done upon him, for wrongfully he has made war upon Gondor and wrested its lands. Is that? Wrested.
Yes,
With a
wrested,
W?
Yes.
Anyway, I don't think I've ever,
Wrestled.
I know I read this word previously, but as I was looking, I'm like,
Wait a minute.
Therefore, the king of Gondor demands that he should atone for his evils and depart then forever. Come forth. And then...
Nobody home.
Sauron had already laid his plans, and he had a mind first to play these mice cruelly before he struck to kill. There came a long rolling of great drums, like thunder in the mountains, and then a braying of horns that shook the very stones and stunned men's ears. And thereupon the door of the black gate was thrown open with a great clang, and out of it there came an embassy from the dark tower. So this creepy guy comes out who's basically like Witch King Part 2.
Mm-hmm. You just wait till you see this guy in the movie.
He's
Ooh, boy.
the lieutenant of the Tower of Barad. I have never... Barad-dûr. I can't say it because D-U-R is a very hard sound for my mouth to make.
That's fair.
Barad-dûr.
Oh, I closed my book.
Barad-dûr. The lieutenant of the Tower of Barad-dûr he was, and his name is remembered in no tale, for he himself had forgotten it, which I can relate to. Sometimes there are days where I'm like, I don't know what my name is. Who am I?
Who am I? What am I doing
And he
here?
said, I am the mouth of Sauron. To which I, like, as at the time that I was reading this, I was like, gross.
So in the movie, he kind of literally is.
Ew.
It's gross.
Nasty. And he comes out and kind of taunts everyone and he's like, Aragorn, hey, you're not a king.
He's such a tool. He, like, comes out and starts poking at Aragorn and making fun of him, and then Aragorn just glares at him and he's like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah. He's like, hey, I didn't come here to fight.
You're like, then why you...
It's like, don't hurt me.
Don't talk the talk, boy.
Also, he specifically said, where is it? It needs more to make a king than a piece of elvish glass, which I think is really interesting that he specifically mentions that, because that is what, where is it? Let me find it. Because the people of Minas Tirith started calling him Elfstone.
Elfstone, yeah.
Isn't there a fancier name that they call him that means Elfstone?
Was it Elisar? Is that the one? I don't know if Elisar
Maybe.
means. That is one of his names.
He has 20 names.
He has many names.
But they cut, like, it's just interesting that the mouth of Sauron is like, you need more than an Elfstone to make you a king. And
But
it's like, well, actually.
It's fun to read that because that's what we just talked about, is all of these things that we've been seeing Aragorn do for the last... I almost said 870 pages. That's not right.
I mean, yeah, it's...
But mostly, yeah. Like, all of these very kingly things that... It's almost like, well, funny you should say that.
Because...
He's actually doing a really good
all
job.
these people call me Elfstone. Because I'm apparently their king now.
Yep. Didn't even ask for it. Just
Interesting.
Happened.
The mouth of Sauron also makes fun of Gandalf a little bit, and he's like, oh my god.
That's a step too far.
You again? He's like, buddy, give it up.
How old are you now?
Yeah, he calls him Old Greybeard and says that he is stuck. Where is it? This time thou hast stuck out thy nose too far. I just think that's very funny. That's also funny for me because, of course, in my head, Gandalf and Dumbledore look the exact same, basically. And Dumbledore specifically is described as having, like, a crooked, like, gangly nose. And so... I don't know why in my head, but I imagine Dumbledore's nose, like, sticks out really far and it's, like, bent to the side because it was broken when his brother and him got in a fight when they were teenagers. And so that's what I'm imagining when he's like, you stuck your nose out too far. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's kind of hard because his nose already, like, sticks out farther than his face. And then I'm like, oh, that's...
Wait a minute. Wrong wizard.
Wrong old wise wizard, whatever. And then this is, honestly... I was like, wow, like, well played, Sauron. This is, like, a good move. I mean, like, obviously not for our team, it's not a good move, but, like, this is, at this point, it's like a game of chess.
Yeah.
And each piece they're moving is putting them towards this final battle of who knows who's gonna win. Because when you first start a game of chess, it's just as equal,
Yeah.
it's an even playing
They're the
field
same
and stuff.
players, the
And so
same-
you have to be very strategic and careful about where you're putting these pieces. And this piece, to me, almost feels like a check.
Yeah. I also somehow found somebody's, looked like professors or smart people's, Google GChat conversation that was somehow online, which I cannot share with you because it's got spoilers in there. But it was fascinating reading them be like, well, but does Gandalf know this about Frodo and Sam? And, a lot of back and forth, well, Saruman thinks that Gandalf knows this, but we know this, but Gandalf might not, and all of the risks that he had to take in this, based on what Saruman shows him, trying to infer what does that necessarily mean about Frodo and Sam.
So he comes out and he holds up first the sword that Sam had carried, and next a gray cloak with an elven brooch, and last the coat of mithril mail that Frodo had worn wrapped in his chartered garments. This is very much where it's I think we don't exactly know what has now happened to Sam and Frodo since we last saw them.
Yes.
I know how they got this stuff specifically, which is that this is what Sam left Frodo with when he was like, I'm going to bury you, but I'm not going to bury you.
Yeah.
And then the orcs came and got him. So that's how they got all this stuff. And we know that. And we know that when they got this stuff, that Sam and Frodo were both still alive, but Frodo had been captured, and they had been separated, but they don't know this.
Yes.
However, a lot could have happened since we last saw Frodo and Sam. So they very well could be dead.
Yeah. Which makes this so fun to read because there's so much that nobody
I
knows.
don't know.
Gandalf doesn't, Sauron doesn't, we don't.
Yeah. But it's a very sad moment because to our eyes, it's Sauron is totally playing them and is making them believe that Frodo and Sam are dead. Because if they believe that, then they've lost all hope.
Yeah.
And
they're trying to figure out where the ring is. That's right. That's another thing that the smart people were talking about.
They're does Gandalf know where the ring is?
Yeah, trying to figure out, obviously we and Gandalf know that Frodo has the ring, but Sauron's trying to figure that out too. And I think that's one of the reasons that they're doing this charge, is to make it seem like we have the ring, we think that we're really powerful, so we're going to make this desperate attempt.
I was going to say, because if that's another thing definitely to consider, because they're presenting all this stuff as if Frodo and Sam are dead and they've defeated them and they now have the ring. However, if I was at this battle, I would be wait a minute, if they had the ring by now, you'd be
toast.
Decimated.
Yeah.
there would be, we wouldn't be having this
and
back and forth.
There'd be no banter. It would
exactly.
Be here's my ring.
We would be dead. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There would be none of this strategic chess playing. So I guess that's why. So before I jump into that, so poor Pippin, runs forth and is no! And the mouth of Sauron is you brought another one?
How many of these little things are there?
He's really? He calls him an imp.
I know. Talk about my boy that way.
And then he says, okay, well, we'll make you a deal. We will give you Frodo back.
All of
because he's still, they actually do say, or no, they don't say he's alive, but they basically say
he's alive.
We'll give you Frodo back and you will save him then from a lifetime of torment and a slow, terrible, painful death if you save him. And our terms are everything east of the mountains or whatever is Sauron's domain, and then everything in the west, no one can fight or have any weapons of any kind, but we'll let them live, quote unquote, peacefully. And they can still have their own governments and everything. But I'm gonna go to Edoras? No. Where's Saruman right now? What's it called? His tower thing. Isengard.
Orthanc. Isengard. Yep.
Isengard.
Yep,
that's
it. That's the one.
Not Orthanc. There's too many towers.
2 of them specifically.
There's more than 2 towers. That's what I was looking at on the map. So I don't remember if there was some Q&A where someone asked me oh, do you know what the 2 towers are? And I was I'm assuming that's Minas Tirith and Minas Morgul. And I was thinking about it more today. I was but in the book, 2 towers, those 2 towers barely come into play. It's more about Saruman's tower, and I guess maybe Minas Morgul, because that's where Frodo and Sam end up going.
Yeah.
So there's Saruman's tower, there's Minas Morgul, Minas Tirith, and then there's also on the map the Dark Tower of Barad-dûr, which is past Mount Doom.
Oh, okay.
Is Orthanc a separate thing? Is that even a tower?
Yes.
Or is that just another name for, like, Minas Tirith or something?
No?
Or isn't Orthanc in Osgiliath? Is this getting to a point now where...
I'm afraid to respond because I know that people would yell at me on Twitter.
No one's gonna yell at you!
No, because I don't know.
Anyway, point being is, very presumptuous of Tolkien to name a book 2 towers when there's like 50
60
towers. Anyway, so the Mouth of Sauron is like, I'm gonna go take over Isengard, and I'm gonna have full control over everything in the West.
Yep.
Which means that no, it's not gonna be like peaceful, self-governing people. It's all gonna be
clearly, we've got such a positive impression of this guy so far.
And
which also, bold move on Sauron's part. Like, I will give you this very small human in exchange for everything.
And that's what Gandalf calls him out on. He's like, this is an interesting deal you've set up, because it seems like we're not really getting a lot in return here.
Yeah. And then he's even
Pippin's
like, well,
Pippin's probably over there.
How
like,
about you give us Frodo first, and then we'll talk. No!
And Gandalf, I did gasp a little bit at this. He says, so the Mouth of Sauron says, these are his terms, take them or leave them. And Gandalf says, these we will take. And I was like, what? You're going to accept it? I was like, what? It's a little fake out. Because he does this thing where he casts aside his cloak and a white light shone forth like a sword in that black place. And he runs forward and gets all the stuff that they had presented that was Sam and Frodo's. Mm-hmm. And then they go into a huge battle.
Yep.
At first, the Mouth of Sauron, and he had come out with like a couple servants or whoever.
Yeah. They
turn around to run back inside the gates. And at first I was like, oh, okay, they're going to go inside, and I don't know, it's going to be more strategy talk. Nope.
This is the moment you've been waiting for.
It says, even before they came to the gate, Sauron sprang his trap. Drums rolled and fires leaped up. The great doors of the black gate swung wide. Out of it streamed a great host as swiftly as swirling waters when a sluice is lifted. And this was also when I remembered how much I hate the word sluice.
Why?
I don't know why.
It's just a very specific word.
I know, but that's why I forgot how much I hated it until it sounds slimy. I don't like it. Sluice.
It's because of the sl at the beginning there.
Oh, see, the part that gets me is the is the UI.
So do you hate juice too?
No. It sounds like it's a very sloshy word.
Yeah.
Sluice. Anyway.
Regardless. And out of that sluice comes hordes of
I wrote down, okay, here we go.
And then you turned the page.
Followed by, uh-oh.
Big uh-oh.
And so everything Sauron has basically comes out, and it's a huge battle, and Nazgul come out, and
everything is awful.
It says, then all hope was quenched. So in this moment where there's this huge battle, and there's like 20 billion characters of much more importance than Merry, than Pippin, we go to Pippin's perspective.
Which is so odd. Like, it's so jarring when you're reading it. You're hearing about, like, Aragorn has no time left for ordering this battle, and everybody's lining up, and you're like, and then we go to Pippin. And
who is
at the front of the line.
And it's Tolkien carrying on with this. It's a very reoccurring thing that he does, where in big moments or important moments, he goes to the perspective of one of the hobbits. Because they're the most, like, naive, innocent perspectives.
Yep.
And, my running theory that I think is correct is that the hobbits are always going to be the stand-in for the reader, because the hobbits at any given time know just as much as the reader does.
Yes.
In fact,
so it's a good perspective
at any given time, the reader probably knows more than the hobbits
do.
So we jump back to Pippin, and Pippin goes, I wish Merry was here. And this is what I was referring to earlier when I said, I'm going to tell you something about the audiobook that will break your heart. So at this point, when Pippin is, like, thinking back, he's like, I wish I could see, he's like, I'm never going to get to see, like, green grass and fresh air again. Like, I'm going to die here. Merry's not here. While this is all happening in the audiobook, they slip in and, like, work into the background music the, like, Hobbit Shire theme.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah. I'll insert it here, actually.
Oh, I wish Betty was here, he heard himself saying. And quick thoughts raced through his mind, even as he watched the enemy come charging into the assault. Well, now at any rate I understand poor Denethor a little better. We might die together, Mary and I. Since die we must. Why not? Well, as he is not here, I hope he'll find an easier end. But now I must do my best.
And he says, well, now at any rate, I understand poor Denethor a little better. We might die together, Mary and I, and since die we must, why not? So...
Just such a hopeless thing to think.
Like, it's dark when you're like, oh, I think I understand Denethor.
Right? Yeah, for real.
You're like, oh, what he did makes sense now.
But Pippin, like, throughout this whole thing has been very much, like, he's the youngest of the group. He's always been like, the lighthearted, kind of comic relief, kind of there for Gandalf to punch around, but that's just, I feel like that carries so much more weight hearing this come from him. You're like,
yeah.
It's hit every one of them. Like, they've all been impacted by this darkness.
Yeah. Poor Bud.
My God.
So, these, like, gross monster people, I don't even know.
What are they, trolls?
Troll!
Troll
in the dungeon!
Thought you ought to know.
A great company of hill trolls out of Gorgoroth, taller and broader than men they were, and they were clad only in close-fitting mesh of horny scales, or maybe that was their hideous hide, but they bore round bucklers huge and black and wielded heavy hammers in their knotted hands. They come and smack down on Baragon. Rip. I'm assuming he's dead
No,
then.
so he's not. Pippin saves him.
Oh,
It
okay.
just says that he was stunned, so they knocked him out, and as he fell, a troll came to chew his throat, which is gross.
Okay,
Pippin
I thought
saves
he had
him.
already
done
it. So
Pippin has done his...
Pippin
heroic
stabs him.
Mhm.
And is kind of like
troll.
knocked down and
He like falls on top of him.
is like kind of fading out, and he says, so it ends as I guessed it would. And then, even as it winged away into forgetfulness, he heard voices, and they seemed to be crying in some forgotten world far above. The eagles are coming. The eagles are coming. For one moment more, Pippin's thought hovered. Bilbo, it said, but no, that came in his tale long, long ago. This is my tale, and it is ended now. Goodbye. And his thought fled far away, and his eyes saw no more. And that's how this chapter ends.
Yep, it's a downer.
So obviously there's something that I don't fully understand there with why he was like, oh, Bilbo.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's how his tale ended, not mine.
I think that line is in The Hobbit. I have not read
What,
The
the
Hobbit
eagles
in a very
are coming?
long time, but in The Hobbit it says the eagles are
Okay,
coming. The eagles
that's what
are coming.
I was like. So
he
is
thinks
this?
he's imagining.
Oh, like Bilbo, maybe.
loopy,
Okay, got it. Because I was like, so is this just like Tolkien's go-to Deus Ex Machina, the eagles coming in to save the day, and he has now done it. He did it first in The Hobbit with Bilbo, and now he's doing it
Gonna
again,
do it again.
with this. So yeah, so obviously I don't fully understand that yet. I will soon.
You will get there.
It's funny, the eagles are coming because I've heard a lot of people make references to like giant eagles saving the day, and I always kind of thought that was a reference to when Gandalf died as Gandalf the Grey and came back as Gandalf the White, because he flies around naked on an eagle.
As you do when you come back from the dead.
So I always kind of thought it was a reference to that with Gandalf flying on the eagle then.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously there's more eagles to come.
They're back. There's a lot of discourse on the eagles. I don't know enough about them to
Discourse
comment,
on the
but
eagles. That's
yes,
great.
Yes. I also really liked, it was like kind of a side note, but that when Burgle is comforting Mary back at the beginning, he says, they will come back, and the men of Minas Tirith will never be overcome, and now they have the Lord Elfstone and Baragond of the Guard, too. And Baragond, like 5 seconds into this battle, out.
Smack.
Out.
Yeah. Also, like, Burgle he's like a 10-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Like, what a sad childlike thing for Tolkien to put in, that he in his mind, he's like, oh yeah, like my dad will save the day. Mm-hmm. Isn't that just heartbreaking?
There's a lot.
So,
this is a sad chapter.
It is, yeah. My last note, well, this is, to say the least, not good.
Not great. Not what you want.
As you can see, I also didn't write many notes at all. Like less
it was
than
a
a page.
short-ish chapter.
Yeah, it's also, it was less than 10
notes
pages.
Did I write anything else out?
Yeah, so is there anything, now that we finished the chapter, is there anything we skipped over or glossed over? Any more depressing poems you want to read?
I can always find more depressing World War I poems. But
Awesome.
I'll spare your listeners.
Awesome.
No, I think we covered it all.
Wow, Bethany. That brings us to the end of this episode.
Awesome.
Is there anything you would like to plug or share with the audience?
Not really.
Great!
Support your local newspaper. That's all.
Yeah, do
As
that.
always.
Especially now.
Wear your
especially
mask.
now.
Wear your mask.
Wear your
everyone.
masks.
Support
Especially
newspapers.
now. Let me emphasize local, because I have not been watching any national coverage of
Nope.
things that are going on. I am I'm following and watching the local journalists who are on the streets.
They're on the streets covering it.
doing
If you-
insane work.
If you feel the need to share something on the internet that says the media is not covering this, please Google it first, because they're
And look
probably
into-
covering
look
it. The
into your-
local
Oh,
media.
listener, some context here. Bethany is a journalist.
I am.
and used to work at a local newspaper.
Yeah.
So
And
that's the
my-
context here for
My
why
old
we're
coworkers are still out there covering protests, getting their COVID tests after they cover the protests, because you can still get exposed to it out there. So give them a shout out, give them some love.
Yep.
That's all.
Cool. Anything media-wise you're enjoying? Books, movies, TV, etc.?
Oh, I've been reading, what's it called? The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, I think. It's The Way of Kings, but they're giant fantasy books. They were super scary to get into because it's a very strange world that he has created, but I think Brandon Sanderson is peak fantasy writing.
I was gonna say he's a
Some
very
other people have talked about him
he's a very
on your
good
show. Yeah.
author.
Mhm.
So yep. I'm gonna read the credits. Oh, I was right about the Black Gate is closed is immediately after the passage of the Martians.
Oh, nice.
Okay,
Smart.
cool, great. I was right. That's what I'm talking about as a member of WB&E. I don't say that. That's what I'm talking about as a proud member of WB&E. You can learn more about the network by going to wbne.org, where you can find all the other podcasts on our network, such as Bagels.
Hello, I'm Tyler Carlin, and I love you.
And I'm Emily Carlin, and I love you too.
And if you love someone, or you love, you should listen to our new podcast, Bagels!
We're not experts, but we sure would like to be.
And we believe the best way to get better at something is to practice.
So listen to our story as it unfolds as young parents,
As best friends,
as husband and wife.
as we explore what relationships mean to us and to those around us.
Bagels, available now at wbne.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
The cover art is by Graphite, aka Vaishon Brannon. You can support him on Instagram at graphite.vnb. You can find the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at TolkienAboutPod. And you can also join the Facebook group. You can find me on Twitter at MCWhat'sUp and Instagram at MCTurnDownForWhat. You can support the podcast by becoming a patron. You can go to patreon.com/TolkienAboutPod to get access to different level tiers. Some of them will give you bonus content. And this week's sponsor for this episode is Matt. Matt, thank you so much for being a sponsor of the podcast. I appreciate your support a lot. And now, the discussion question. So a couple weeks ago, the question was, what smell would awaken you from death? And this is from the Houses of the Healing, when Aragorn wafts the thing into their faces, and they're like, I smelled parchment and grass and
I had a hard time with that question, because
hair.
I don't resonate with Mary waking up and being like, I'm really hungry. I feel like when I wake up from being sick or whatever, like, I don't want
I just
food.
I love that so much. His first thing is, I'm hungry. Anyway, so some people shared really poetic, beautiful. This was one of my favorite questions to ask because there were two kinds of answers. Mm-hmm. There were the people who were like, pizza!
Yeah.
And then there are people who gave really, which I'm grateful to read all the answers. I love all of them. But I particularly love the people who spent time to come up with a poetic answer. Meredith said, the start of a summer rain onto a brick driveway while a campfire crackles merrily, sheltered from the storm.
That's beautiful.
I know! And then on Instagram, Shire Library said, sagebrush, clean, cold mountain air.
Ooh.
Yeah, I love clean, cold mountain air.
I'm picturing you're in a cottage and somebody throws the door open. You kind of get blasted with a wave of cold, crisp.
In Discord, Jordan said, fresh bacon and coffee. There were a lot of people who
Same.
said bacon,
Yeah.
coffee. There were a lot of like freshly baked cookies, brownies. Oh, and this one just made me laugh so hard. Daniel in our Discord said he was like, this isn't a smell, but the sound of my cat getting ready to throw up.
Yes. That's what I thought about saying, was like the sound of my dog taking a giant pee under my bed. I would bolt upright.
Oh, that was a good one. So the discussion question for this week is, I don't know.
What's your favorite sad World War I poem?
Honestly. Yeah, I meant to tell you when you first walked into my apartment to be like, hey, as we're having our like conversation, be thinking about what could be a good question, but I forgot to say. So what happens in this chapter?
It's just very sad.
Yeah.
About like what's like overwhelming odds story that you really...
Okay, here's the discussion question. Tell us what your favorite, like, underdog story or comeback story is. Please do not send me the blooper of Chris Pratt in Parks and Rec from the Everyone Loves a Good Comeback Story. Oh, man. Kim Kardashian. Anyway.
You lost me.
Oh, have you not seen this? I will have to show you this blooper.
Please do.
I can't believe you've never seen this.
I might have. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Okay, as
know.
soon as we finish recording, actually, we're going to stop recording right now so that we can go watch this. All right. All that being said, Bethany, do you have any parting words for the audience?
I am so excited to see what Mary Clay thinks of the rest of this, and I'm also so excited to watch the movies together. So.
And that's what I'm talking about.